my intention through this is actually to go through different dry fly winging techniques. There's probably about 30 regular techniques that people use, and some are very, very simple and make it easy. So I'm hoping this will take you from the easy stuff to perhaps trying some more complicated stuff. There's some patterns which I've only seen tied by one or two people previously, which is a split wing parachute. But everybody got this, didn't they?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Right. You know, the whole point of that is that I'll be talking about some of the pictures on there, which will relate to this. That's got the dry fly on it as well as nymph, wet fly, and lure. But the whole point is, if you concentrate on the dry fly,
we'll get him up.
It will actually allow you to tie with what is regarded as traditional proportions.
Look at it.
Right, which is, sorry, everybody okay now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which will allow you to tie in traditional proportions.
I
also talk about triggers with flies. And this matters not whether it's on a lock styling, whether it's on a river, whatever you're doing. The whole point is that from my own observations, I believe fish take a specific fly because there's something within that fly that triggers their response. And sometimes if you exaggerate that trigger, it can work for you. And an example of that is actually when I talk of triggers, most people, I talk of footprint of feet. So it's the hackling style that you use, about size of wing and shape of wing, and also length of tail. Now you'll see traditionally the idea is that the wing is normally the length of the hook shank as measured from behind the eye up to the bend, which you'll see on that diagram. And the tail is normally the hook length, which is from where the eye starts, whether it's bent up or down, to the end of the bend. Now, I have experimented, and sometimes I tie a fly with 3 times the length of tail, and it works. And if you're going to ask me, why does it work sometimes and doesn't work the others? I couldn't tell you. The point is, if it's not working under normal circumstances, then what I do is actually will change the way I present a pattern. Now, that might be some using a different casting technique, because on the rivers, what I'm looking for is drag-free drift. It's also what I'm looking for on lock style and lake fishing, because what you're trying to do is present the fly as the natural. If you're trying to instill reaction from a fish, and Peter mentioned it earlier, then there's a number of things you can do, which is in relation to the speed of retrieve. It's in relation to actually stopping the retrieve. And I've actually seen it where you've been strip as fast as you can, and the fish is boring after it. You stop dead, and the fish will actually hit the fly, right? Turn around and then take the fly, because its instinct is to chase and check out whether it's food. And a lot of times when you're actually fishing, you'll have a fly there, and the fish will come up and boil at the fly, but won't actually take it. Now, that's an indication to me in the rise form. And if you start reading your rise forms, it will actually tell you why or how the fish expect the fly to be presented. And I'll mention it now when I talk about parachute hackles. You can tie them down and you can tie them up, right? If you tie them up, the fly will probably fish a millimetre deeper than it would if it was up, or 2 millimeters if it was up. And that can make all the difference, right? So don't get pulled into the thought of, am I fishing the right pattern? Am I presenting it the way the fish want to see it? Now, those of you that fish stillwater lakes, go to the bank. How many times have you been there throughout the whole year and you see these tiny little dimples just right at the extension of your cast, and you cast over it, and the first pull is straighten your line, right? And then as soon as you pull, you're pulling it away from the fish. We've all had that, haven't we? Frustration. And occasionally a fish will follow it in, perhaps take it. Well, the first pattern I'm going to show you is actually using foam in order to make the fly float. Now, before I switch camera, the foam that I'm actually using is this Spirit River foam, right, which I drill out. Now, this is a lot more. You can see me squeezing it on the top there. This is really, really dense. It's not like the foam that you often get, but you can get. I normally get mine from Rutland Angling, and I'm not here to sell anybody's products, but that's what I use. So I'm going to change to my other camera. Right, cool. That worked, didn't it? Eh? So what you can see now, if at any times it changes, right? So this is one of the simplest patterns that I can tie for you. Is the first thing is I'm going to tie on the silk with a jam knot. Do I need to explain to you what a jam knot is?
Yes.
Right.
Please.
Right, not a problem. Right. When I'm tying the silk on, in order to make it secure, what I do is I pull it over, and for this particular fly, I'm taking it right up to the eye. And what I'm doing then is I take the silk over that first turn, and then I can pull the waist up, and then by keeping that waist taut, this bit here, the silk slides right down. So the initial bit is a jam knot, and this is just a way of actually securing the whole and the rest of the body. Now, I've taken this hook is actually barbed, and I don't normally fish with barbed hooks, but to emphasize the fact, this is a midge hook with a straight eye, with a slight bend to it, and this is a size 26, I think. And then I can snap it off. If you keep your bobbing tension taut, then it'll create a weakness in the silk that you're holding, and it'll break off quite easily. So I'm bringing this just back up to this top in open turns. And I've got a piece of foam which I've already drilled. All right. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it at an angle. All right. And I've left it quite long because it doesn't matter. And I'm holding that where the thickest part comes in front of the eye. Can you see that all right?
Yes.
I'll pinch and loop and do a soft loop over. If I pull tight now, what's going to happen is that is going to cut the silk. So I'm just putting soft turns as I go further down, and I'm not worried about it going around the hook at this stage. Right, so I've done my soft turns. Now that is 10 times too thick, but now I've got it attached to that. What I can do is come up with harder turns and start to secure that down. And this pattern is called, I don't know if you've heard of it. That was clever, wasn't it? All right, it's called a top hat. Anybody ever heard of it?
No.
Right, and you can have it with a, I don't know about the rest of you, but as I've got older, my eyesight has got really poor.
That's normal.
Yeah, well, it's called age, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm putting the silk in front of it, so it's there. And surprise, surprise, you'll be finding out now why it's called a top hat. Because it looks like it's got a top hat. And you can reduce the whole, you can cut that to whatever size that you want. Now, if your eyesight is worse, in the right conditions, sometimes you want black ones, you can have orange ones, the color of it doesn't matter. But if it sits up like that in the water, you're going to see it. All right. So I'm just bringing this down. And the next thing I'm going to do is tie in the rib. And the whole, now you could do this just with black silk and then varnish it. But I like to rib it. Anybody would have thought that a frog came in them, wouldn't they? Rivet. Right, I've got this material here, which is just crystal flash, and you can use black, whatever. And I tend to use one thread, put the two ends together. Put the two ends together like that. Turn it over and tie it on. All right, I'm not worried about touching turns or anything like that because I'm going to do an overbody of black rabbit fur. And the reason why I use black rabbit fur, and I'm using this Czech nymph, sort of a nymph blend, which is nice and dark, is because, and the reason why I use this is, and just for those of you, I'm just going to come out a bit so you can see some of the things I'm doing. Right, I always cut the corner of the packet because then I can pinch it off and it comes off the amount that I want. If I want any more, I can go in, but I've got a nice small pinch there. Take it up to the silk. And being rabbit, what it does, it goes on quite nicely and tightly, but it actually, it will soak in water. Now you're going to ask me, why on earth would you want a dry fly to soak in water? Because you want to be in control of where that sits in the water. So I'll take my ribbon, ribbit. That frog's turned up again, and I just twist it. It's one strand doubled over, and I'm just bringing this up through just as a bit of flash. Tie it off, and I'm bringing the silk back slightly. I'm not leaving a wing on here. If you want, you can leave a wing on here, but this is like an emerging buzzer that's coming up. And what I do like, I use this stuff, which is from Troutline, and this is called Rainbow Black, I think. It is really very, very nice. It's got a lot of flash in that, but I like the redness of that flash because it looks like a bit like hemoglobin. I picked up some posh words too. Look,
Oh, yeah.
We're all intelligent
I'm on a
people.
Zoom session at the moment. Can I call you back? No, she's gone to her ballet.
So again, I've just put that on there. And I don't particularly want it loose, but I don't want it huge. Bring it through. That point there. And wet finish him off. Now, something I've stopped doing, I don't varnish my flies. I don't think there's a need. So with a wet finish, yeah, I do varnish my pulling flies from a lock style, but because I think you can wash the head off. But that is your first pattern, and that basically is just the top hat. So if I bring this into, on too far, look. The top hat, simple pattern. Like I said, that's a size 28.
Can't even see them hooks, 28.
Of course you can, man. What's up with you?
Can't even pick them up with my fat fingers.
4 sets of glasses is what you want.
Like Mr. Magoo.
Yeah. So, and that's the first pattern. So, the second pattern I'm going to show you because I'm trying to get in. But is there any questions anybody wants to ask about that?
No.
All right. No trick questions. No. All right. Good.
How do you tie the damn thing onto your tippet?
Well, that's why you've got an eye on the end of it.
Uh,
£10 maximum go through that, die, Mark.
I wouldn't use £10 with the size 28, funnily enough. I don't know. I can't think why I wouldn't, but the reality is, it's worth noting in actual fact that I tied some really tiny midge patterns for a friend of mine whose eyesight was awful, right? And he had exactly the same issue that you're coming in. Say, how can you tie tiny hooks? So what I was actually using was I was using blind-eyed. You've got 2 options. Orvis used to do the big-eyed hooks, which were fantastic. I haven't seen them for years and years and years. So what I did, I got some blind-eyed, and I'll dig them out and show you later if you want, if you remind me. Blind-eyed traditional Japanese Kantara hooks, which are really quite oddly shaped, and I use bead silk as an eye. All right, and the way I used to tie the tippet on, because you can go as fine as you like, because it's still fishing as a dry fly. The fact that it's your eye is bead silk, it matters not, but it can be as big as your finger if you want. So instead of being there for about 4 hours like that, or get one of the is it CFO? One of the threaders and utilize that. But I probably wouldn't use anything over 0.10 millimeter anyway for that. And probably use 8. What I would use is a soft tip rod, because it ain't no use fishing a really stiff 7-weight rod when you're fishing midge patterns where the flies suck them in and go zooming off because you've got light tippets. Let the rod do the work. And this is one thing a lot of people don't understand about why we have the actions of rods with the handles that we have for the purposes that we want them to do. Right.
Mark?
Yeah.
Peter's asking what type of hook it is. It's a wide gate hook.
Right. No. It's a midge hook. It's an old partridge hook. I think it's an old partridge merino hook.
Marinaro, Mark.
Sorry?
Marinaro.
No, I've had my tea, thank you. I have a selection of tiny hooks with different gauges. Tiemco do a similar one. I've used that tonight, but I quite often I use coarse hooks now. Not spade ends, although I've tried that as well. And that's another thing that you could do is actually use a spade end hook and tie on a bit of tippet before, because don't forget, when we first started fly fishing and flies were tied to gut, they were tied to the shank of the fly. And I've got to say, these people knew something, but it's a Mariano hook, or Merino, if you like to be.
Marinaro. Vince Marinaro, it's named after.
Yeah, like Carbonara, his mate.
Carbonara.
And he married lasagna, didn't he? Sorry, I'm being facetious. Right. The next hook is tied on an Arex traditional nymph. It's a freshwater 561. These are barbless. This isn't my own pattern, I hasten to add. This was a pattern which I picked up from Davy McPhail. But again, I was with a fishing. I tied a pole for a friend, and I thought, well, I've got to see if they work first off. And my son and I went to, as we do, Clywedog, and we fished this pattern, and it was embarrassing because I hadn't fished for a long time, and we only managed to land 80 fish each on the dry. We were like a couple of girls just giggling, and we missed more fish than we struck into because we were watching each other's kit. Now, again, I'm using black thread. It's 8/0 thread. I've put it on with a jam knot and taken it up to that point there. I'm bringing it back to about 3/4. And what I'm going to do now is use bigger tube. All right, and again, all I'm going to do is cut this in. Now, this is going to have a parachute hackle. How many of you have issues with tying with parachute flies with the posts?
Yes.
Right, because a lot of people find that when they do it with thread, or whether it's Antron or something like that to form the posts, then they have real issues with actually getting it to stand up and get it stiff enough. I'm not going to say anything there. I'm waiting for Peter Hiley or Glyn Williams to say something.
Is that age as well?
That's just misfortune.
I think it's something to do with those blue movies, I think, Mark.
No, I'm colourblind. And again, I'm not worried that it's going round. All I'm interested in is that's going to be seated in the right spot. Because I'm actually going to tie over that point there. That's it. Lovely. Right. Just going to push it down a bit further. Now, the reason why I'm using a nymph hook, because it's a stronger hook. And what I found is I tied it with a dry fly hook to start. And the nightmare was they kept straightening out. So I tied it onto this. Now, I'm going to cut that a little shorter, I hasten to add. I haven't dipped it in my Viagra. I promise. Right. First thing is with this. Sorry, I keep flying off camera because I've got so many bits of materials here. I like, although I'm tying this with seal's fur, I do like a bit of flash, and I'm using this Mirage medium tinsel as a rib. Sorry, somebody asking a question?
Carry on again.
I'm tying that in, just taking it all up, and it's all tightened up now. Unless you keep it in it with the top of your bobbin, of course. Right. I'm not going to cut that just yet. I would normally, but if it's the first time you've been tying this pattern, and listen, there's nothing fancy about the pattern. It's just the way that I'm presenting the actual post. A rare commodity, seal's fur, black and red.
What size hook, Mark?
It's a size 14 RX. Now, a lot of people ask me, do you use wax on these types of flies? And the truth is, if I can avoid it, no. Sometimes it depends on the seal's fur you've got. If it's more mature, then it's actually like, it's almost impossible to dub. And there's two ways you could do that. One is roll it in your hand like you would, for those of you, those ex-miners of you that used to smoke shag, and get your hands like this and rub away at your back heater before you put it in your pipe. I can see some of you grinning there. That's showing your age. Probably the back of the skull for you, was it, Derek? Oh,
Behind the bike sheds.
yeah. So much education was done behind the bike shed, I tell you. I know that because I went to a Roman Catholic school. I was the only Protestant in a Roman Catholic school. That was an experience. It's where I learned to box. Right, I'm taking the rib now, bringing it round. Make a nice pearly butt. Three or four turns is fine. And bring it to the front of the post. I'm taking a cream feather now on a saddle. It doesn't matter how big, really, with this pattern, how big your hackle is. This is a great way of utilizing those hackles that you think, what on earth am I going to do with that? So just bring it off and tie it. That point there. Bring it up, and then I tie it to the base of the post. Now take
That's shiny side down.
no, it's dull side down.
Okay.
Because it don't matter. It's to be honest, you get it in any way you can. Sorry, I'm just looking for my legs, as the actress said to the bishop. There they are. Now these are pre-tied with hoppers, and this is you can use. I don't tend to use double knotted, which those are. I tend to use single knotted, which is what that is. And I normally put 6 in. You can put as many as you want in. It's entirely up to you. But the one thing I do tend to do, I turn the fly upside down and I tie him in with one turn at that point there. And then I can pull them into the length that I want them, because I don't like them too long. There we go. Lovely jubbly. Double the leg stalks back and just tie them in. And I'm just going to put a little bit more seal's fur. Now, I sometimes also tie this pattern, not with just black seal's fur, but with the darkest claret seal's fur that looks like black. And you'll be amazed at the difference that will make. Probably none. So I'm just building that head up. That point there. Bringing this round to the front, and I'm tying it off. And everybody's thinking he hasn't done anything with that. Parachute hackle yet? Well, I'm about to. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this, and I've got to be careful here because I can only move it so far. And I'm actually going to tie the thread on at that point there. Making sure that I've gone above and below it so I don't pull the thread out. Can you still see that all right?
Get out of focus, Mark.
All right, okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah? Take my hackle pliers.
Sorry, Mark, did you tie onto the post?
Yes, I did.
Post and underbody at the same time?
No, just the post.
Just the post.
So I finished off the head, and I've come to the post, right? And I'm bringing this around the post. And what I'm going to do is turn it on the side again, and I'm pulling the hackle downwards at 90 degrees, and I'm tying underneath all the hackle. And then I can snap it off. Well, if it will snap off, there you go. By snapping it off, it just ensures that you've done it right. And I'm finding this awkward because I'm twisting round so you can still get the camera angle. And I'll whip finish this off. And to whip finish off at this size, you will need an extended. I'm going to make this easier for myself, actually, because now I can cut the post. Ta-da! There you go. Twist it. Pull the legs round to where I want it. Push it. And tie it around the post. And there you have a nice Bibbio hopper with a post you can actually see. Happy with that?
That's good.
And you can do that with any dry fly, whether or not it's on the river. If it's on the river, I use things like that, right, in different colors. These are actually 2 mil tubes, so it just makes it so much easier. You can use flat foam if you want and bring it up and just fold it up like that onto the top and tie around it. It just makes it a bit more easier, and you can see the damn thing, because you'll certainly see when something swirls around it.
What would you call it? A Bibbio Top Hat Hopper?
Well, I call it bloody marvelous. Honestly, it just gets ripped apart. Sometimes I tie the legs up as opposed to down, but you can play with it as you want. But I treat it with a bit of dilly wax, and it does work. It really does work. Right, so are you happy with foam?
Yeah, it's love fun.
Yeah. Don't say phone for God's sake. Right. What I'm going to do now is one of my own patterns. Okay. I'm tying it. Well, that's not good because I turned all that off. So my apologies, gents. That was my phone. Right, I'm using a RX size 16, and I tie them a lot smaller than this 503, right, which is just a lightweight, regular, barbless dry fly hook. Now, many moons ago, there was a company called Tyre's Mate, run by Tony Hopkins. He used to, and all he did was supply other shops. And he used to create a material which was he called body wrap, all right, and that's it, clear. And what it is, it's very, very similar to this, which is hen's body quills, right? But he used to, the hens does it all in different colors. What I found was, and I asked Tony to get me this in clear for no other reason. Sorry, I've just pulled the thread out of it, so I've got to rethread it. In clear, because I wanted a material that I could utilize for all things in regards to, I wanted it to do a number of things, right? I wanted to be able to use it for, do you know what? This never happens normally.
Just while I think about it, Mark, what size foam tubing is that you've tied that hopper with?
That was 4mm.
4mm.
4mm. Right. Something I should have explained. I cut all these myself, and I utilize these cutters. I got them from Uphaven.
Oh yeah, I've got some.
Time.
Yeah.
And they come in different sizes. Stick them in a drill bit, and I hasten to add, this is my wife's drill, not mine. She uses it to get my wallet out of the safe and all sorts, and it needs to be sharp so you can utilize it. Right, I'm just I'm going to come on the bigger camera so you can see what I'm doing, because so this, because there's a couple of things I want to show you here. All right, because I'm going to tie this pattern twice so you can change it differently twice. If you're wondering why on earth I'm struggling holding stuff and doing things with my hands, it's because I've got no feeling, some of you know, but I've got no feeling at all in my right hand, and my left hand's not particularly good either now. All right, so that is the material I'm going to tie the fly with. The underbody is going to be tied with sheer size 14 in this light, very light sort of primrose, and I'm going to utilize Antron fur for the tail and the wing, but I'm also going to utilize these things, which are dye pens, right? Now, the whole point is I can do whatever color combination I want, and I've got a whole sets of these, and these aren't cheap. These are Copic sketch pens, right? So they've got a brush at one end or flat piece on the other, and they're for painting with, believe it or not. But they're permanent they're permanent colors. Because I'm a great believer, particularly for the rivers, you need a fly that is translucent. Some of you may have heard me talk about a fly time book called Sunshine and the Dry Fly by D.W. Dunn. and it had such an influence on me. He would always take a living insect, and he's from the Times of Holford and all the rest of it, and he would actually view a fly from underneath on a pane of glass, and he used to then tie his imitations with literally single or 2 or 3 filaments of fibers of silks, which you could no longer get. I'm very, very fortunate that I was given a set of the actual original silks, and I don't use them. But he would actually tie his flies with this stuff. First thing he used to do with his hooks was, because all the hooks were either japanned or bronzed, is stick them in caustic soda, right, and then paint them with white enamel paint. And I thought, well, that's a bit extreme, but I'll give it a go. And I was doing a lot of competition angling at the time, and I tied things like shipman's buzzers and all the rest of it, and because I used to love to fish the dry fly, and I was using, I put 2 of the same flies on, but one with a white enamel body and one with just a regular bronze body. And when I was catching on one, I changed it position on the cast. And the one with the white underbody caught 3 times as many fish as the one with the bronze body. All right, because one of the reasons you use seals fur is that it is translucent and the light shines through it. If you block that light transference through by having a solid color, then it causes issues. I don't know if you remember when the Irish first brought out the mayfly pattern, right, which had I forget what it's called now, with the bronze mallard above and below. Can anybody remember what the pattern's called? Very famous pattern. Glenn?
Was it the Gosling?
No, not the Gosling. That was Egyptian goose on that,
Yeah.
but very, very similar.
Dabbler.
Sorry,
Dabbler.
the
Dabbler.
dabbler. That's it. God, I couldn't think of it for a minute. It's Alzheimer's. See, people never realised that the dabbler had a silver underbody. If you didn't have a silver underbody, it didn't work as efficiently as it did. And the reason why it was a claret dabbler was because a lot of the nymphs that used to come up from Loch Earn, from the base, were actually clarity, sort of claret coloured. And that's why it works so well. So, but I'm going to change cameras again. I hope I'm
Question.
not. Yeah.
Question. What about adding tying PTFE tape in first along the hook?
Well, I think it even gets easier with that. I either use white or this light coloured silk, this yellow coloured silk, purely and simply because I found that when I started doing that, when it got wet, because I should explain that D.W. Dunn used to then treat his flies with, I think it was camphor oil, right, which made them go right instantly. They would float, and sorry, castor oil, not camphor oil, but it would also become instantly translucent. And all the it's a fascinating book. I showed you it, didn't I, Keith? Right. Well, back to reality now, and I'm going to move all this rubbish away so you can see. Right. So. Right. I'm just going to bring it in a bit now. So what I'm actually going to use on here is a material that you all tend to get hold of. And what I tend to use is slate grey. This is aero wing, right? But you can use siliconized polypropylene. You can utilize Xylon or this sparkle emerger stuff, right? Anything to make wings out of, it will work. It doesn't have to be aero wing, but because this is more readily available than most other things, this is what I'm going to use. Right.
Antron will do the same job.
Sorry?
Antron will do the same job.
Absolutely. Well, I said anything. It's all Antron based. It's just that the marketing ploy of this is that it's hollow. Right. So what I've done is I've cut, and it comes in 4 strands.
Slightly out of focus, Mark.
Right. That's because I keep bobbing about like that. Oh,
That's it.
hey. Even a broken watch is right twice a day. Right. So what I'm doing is I'm tying in 1 strand and this is going to be the tail, but I'm going to cut it. All right. So this can be actually be utilized as an emerger. So if you remember, the theme of the day is that we were going to tie flies that we could utilize for dry flies, and pull this back and tie that in, right? And now I'm going to tie that off. So that's tied on with the silk. Yeah, everybody happy with that? Now, first thing I'm going to do, so I'm going to remove that silk. I'll be utilizing it again soon. Remember that this tail needs to be the length of the hook shank. So I know that the top bit is the length of the hook shank, so I'm going to cut from there. So that tail is actually supported by that. So now what I've got is I've got a cross between a tail and a shock. So immediately you're talking about an emerger possibility. Right. And then wind on sorry, I'm having real issues with this because good preparation and planning hasn't worked today.
Take your time. We're in no rush.
Sorry, I'm looking for my threader, which I had in my hand not 2 minutes ago, and there's now. Just a thought for you, by the way. Those of you that pay out lots of money for threaders, if you go to your chemist, these are actually called gums, and they're flossing loops for your teeth, right? But they're actually fantastic for threading your bobbins.
They're brilliant. They are, Mark.
Yeah, well, when Zeti used to sell them you at about £2 or £3 for their bobbins.
you can get about 10 of them for a couple of quid.
Yeah, well, you get those packs. I think the packs I got are 20 for about 250 or something,
Yeah.
and they last a lifetime, you know. Unless you got family members that keep nicking them because they're really useful things. Right, start again. Right, so I'm just tying this on and putting this underbody of this material, which is known as body quills.
Focus.
Oh no.
Move that foam out of the, that's it.
Yeah. How's that? Now, the first thing, everybody knows the tying of a Universal Baetis Nymph, don't you? No, obviously not. Met by deathly silence. Right, it's normally...
Most are on mute, Mark.
Right. That is, it's a butt of number 17 fly right, followed by number 47 fly right, which is a dark color. Now, what I like to do is I take this orange, a half an inch, and if you study the insects yourself on your own ground, you can actually apply the color scheme that would suit your local insects. I then take this, which is a grey olive, greyish yellow it's called. And I've coloured that there. I'm building up the thoracic area. So I've got that nice green colour. Until it goes clear, and then as it goes clear, I'll come back to the end, and then I can create my rib. And for my rib, I'm using this brown. And it is, rather than being too heavy, it's quite subtle in everything that it does. And I bring it up to this point here. Tie on my thread again. Remove that body material. And you can see the fly starting to have a bit of life now, isn't it? Now, I now take another single strand from what I've cut off before. And I'm going to form my wing. Now I have a choice. There's two ways I can form this wing. I'm tying this on at that point there. And I'm tying it on figure of 8. Now, what I can do now is I can brush it up, pull it up there, and cut it and tie it so it's like that. All right, so it creates 2 wings. But what I'm actually going to do is, I've got one inherent thread there. I've figure of 8'd it, and I'm coming to the front. And before I tie the actual wing, I'm coming to the back, and I'm going to add a dubbing. And the dubbing I'm going to add is some snowshoe emerger, because it doesn't have hackle. Can you see that all right? No. Let me do that. Right. Natural Spirit, snowshoe rabbit foot dubbing. I like this because it's a bit rough. Like it more if it would come out the hole. So I have a little bit here. Quite like this because it's quite stringy and I can brush it out later. It is also water repellent. I'm not worried about this being opaque because let's be honest, the thorax area of a fly is opaque. Bringing it through. Again, figure of 8. Just want to tighten that up a bit more to get rid of that waste. And bring it to the front. Now, I've got fine filaments on both sides. If I twist this anti-clockwise, right, the far wing, if I twist it anti-clockwise, which is towards me, the wing will form a loop and go to the front. Can you see that?
Yeah.
If you twist it too much, it'll end up furled. Pinch and loop, pull down. So there's my first wing. All right, bring it round. This side, I want to twist it clockwise. So I want it comes towards me. And can you see it there? There you go. And it goes into the front there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
All right, one turn. Now, what I'm doing now is I'm evening up the sizes. So what I've created is an emerging loop wing, which sits quite nicely. Take the waist of the wing away.
Focus has gone again, Mark.
Oh, bugger, just right at the good bit.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have that as an epitaph. My focus has gone again. Now, that is the completed fly. If I wanted, I could dye the head more reddish brown, but I think it looks quite a nice natural pattern. The only thing I've got to do is underneath there is pull some of that hair out. Some of the dubbing. And you've got a pattern there that I tend to pull the wings back a bit because that's how the natural looks. But if I push it round a bit, do you get a better view of it there like that?
That's a lovely point.
But the thing is, for me, it's got all the triggers of both an emerging fly and emerging dun. If I wanted it specifically for emerging, what I could do is actually shorten those wings just by pulling them in a bit. They're centered, right? So they're actually split wings. And it's an easy way of achieving something that will last for a lot longer than traditional winging, which I am going to do. You happy with that?
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
Very.
nice fly.
So would you call it a loop wing emerger?
I'd call it very good. Yeah, I would literally just call it a loop wing Universal Baetis Emerger. But it's one fly you can carry all the time. If I do this, right?
What sizes would you tie that on, Mark?
I would go down the size minuscule. Sorry, I've turned the other camera because what I'm doing is now, if I do this now and pull this down, what have you got?
Spinner.
Spinner.
Yeah.
Right? All of a sudden the fish are taking duns again because blue-winged olives are coming on. I just pinch that back up and I got my dun back. It ain't going to spin when it's casting. It is, which is one of the issues I have with natural feathers, is that sometimes with the wings, they make it spin. Happy with that?
What size hook was it, Mark?
This was a size 16 RX freshwater FW503.
You'd go all the way up to tiny, would you?
Oh, I'd go down to 2022. But I would only use half the hair that I've got there.
Yeah.
Right. But the reason why I'm tying it on a size 16 is so you can all see what I'm doing. Right. Because listen, if I can do it now with the condition of the way my hands are, and a lot of these patterns I've developed over years and years and years, I take the original ideas and I just change them to what suits me. I've got to say, all of you, please, when you're tying, do not care what anybody else thinks. The only creature that you need to convince is a feeding trout. End of. Right? There is so much rubbish I see on social media, and I won't comment on it, where people say, oh, I don't think this is good enough because I see 3 filaments to the right and there's 5 filaments to the left, and I actually think, what a load of crap. The fly police do not exist. All right. Otherwise, it would be coming through my windows with stun grenades every fortnight. All right. Don't worry about it. If you make a mistake, it is not a waste of time. All right. We're all going through a learning process. If you please, if you make a mistake and you think, well, I still might catch fish, give it a go. Because some of my best patterns have been the roughest, and I mean roughest, the patterns you could ever see, right? But because I've thought about it, and that's the difference, is I can fish it with confidence because as a tired and experienced angler, I know what I want from it. The only golden rule I will say to you is drag free drift if it's on a river, right? The only thing I would say to you is if you are pulling your fly, it ain't no longer a dry fly unless it's a sedge, right? What you're actually creating then is a lure. You just got to imitate what the insect does. And the best way to learn that is to actually sit in your arse and watch. Because so many people don't. Sit there and just watch. If nothing else, you'll have a lovely day. Right, you know, seeing all sorts, imagining all sorts of things. And you look over your shoulder, think, I hope nobody's watching. Because you're not supposed to be there to be enjoying yourself. Right. So that's a loop wing. Happy with that?
Yeah.
Right. So there's things that you can also do with synthetics that you can also do with CDC. All right. So I'm going to actually do a on the same size hook again. Right. I'm going to do a universal Baetis Nymph, right? But I'm going to put the wing on 3 or 4 different ways. All right, so I'll put the wing on, show you, then take the wing off, and then show you again. All right. I better. Are any of you? Are you finding this a waste of time, or are you all okay? Right? Is there any?
All okay?
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Oh, good.
If there's anything specific you want to see, because what I do want to finish with is because I was told it was impossible to do, is a split wing parachute hackle. Have you tried one of those? And have you seen one of those? The only other person I know I've seen do it is Davey McPhail. And he did it exactly the same way I did it. No, I'm not putting myself in the same lines of that man because he's an absolute bloody world star. But don't ever listen to anybody who says you can't do that. You can achieve anything that you want. But I'll get onto that in the next sequence after this one. Right, so I'm attaching my hook. I'm just moving this back round again. So it's more difficult for you to see and easier for me to tie. No. Is that all right? Can you see all right there?
Perfect.
Yep.
Oh, that means we'll bugger it up in a minute there. Right. I'm using 14 ohm silk again. Again, this light primrose. Bringing it through. If you look at the proportions, where on your note with the hook it says throat, right? The gap between the point. I bring it to where the barb normally goes up, and I think it's referred to here as the brow, which is a gap between the bend and the actual barb. Because I don't tie barbless, I just take it to where the barb would be, or just before it. All right, so don't go down the bend with this particular pattern. Right, now I had everything next in front of me then. I squished it all away. Right. The first thing I'm going to tie in are tails. All right. Now
It's
I
zoomed in on the
use.
dubbing.
Hey.
It's zoomed in on the dubbing.
Oh,
There we go.
even Nelson's got it. Even Nelson's going to get his eye back tonight, I tell you. Right, now. Two things I'm going to do first. I'm going to tie in the butt. And again, I'm using these Universal done colors, which is 17 in the butt. Don't want that much. 17 color fly right in the butt. And I'll show you a way of, by doing it this way, it will allow you to tie your, oh, there we go. I'm making this but a little bit bigger there. Right. Because this will assist me to tie in the tails, whether it's cock dilly on or whatever. I'm going to put 2 on each side. The reason why I'm putting 2 on each side is in case one breaks off, and then the fly's not useless. I don't think it makes diddly squat difference to the trout. I really don't. But, and I'm putting the first piece in there on the hook shank. Can you see it there? And it comes out. There's 2 of them there. And I'm going to start bringing that in. There you go. Now, the other advantage of having 2 on each side is it will help your fly continue to float evenly. Now, sometimes, however, I want the fly to be deeper in the water film, all right? As opposed to being on top of the water film. If we're talking to spinners, I'll tell you now, Paul Proctor will tell you, he doesn't have any tails in his spinners at all. Right? He can't stand them, he says, because most insects drop their tails as they start to egg lay. Controversial, isn't it? But I know Paul very well. And I don't think he's able to bullshit. So I'm just tying down the rest of those. Now I've got my tails down a bit. But now I can just move them up a bit. But what they are, what you can see is that they're well separated, aren't they? I've been looking for this bit of fluff now for about 4 hours, so I'm going to large expense and digging out another piece. Number 47, fly right, which is dark olive brown, is the color that you want, and that's my fly right wallet. Right, which is a mix of colors. I've had this since God was a boy, I think, since I started tying.
I don't think they do them now, do they, Mark?
I don't know, but you can, Superfine's just as good with similar colors. But they don't do it now, do they?
I haven't seen it for about 30 years.
Well, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
You can still get fly right separately.
Yeah, but not in
Um,
the wallets.
What's it do that? Hackle, I think.
Mark, what length are the tails compared with the length of the hook?
Right. I have used these tails as the length of the hook, full stop, from beyond the eye through to the end of the bend. Right. So what you've got is, if that is the full length of the hook, yeah,
Mhm.
there, that's the full length of my tails.
Yeah.
Right. As per the document I give you.
Yeah. Okay.
However, I will say I don't always stick to that. Sometimes I go twice the length, and sometimes I go 3, and then with spinners, even 4 times the length. It don't always work, but sometimes it does. I'm not putting a rib on this because I want to get in as much as I can for you. Sorry. If none of you have one of these, get one of these, because I'm able to pick my scissors up then without crippling myself. Best piece of kit I've ever had. I've got about 14 of them dotted around the fly tying desk. Right, so now I've got to make a choice, right? What hair do I want in this wing? All right. So if I go for synthetic, which I've got no issues with whatsoever, right? I've bent this. This is the piece, the one strand I'd over, which I've bent and doubled on itself and brought up, and I need to tie it on top. All right, I'll bring that piece back and I can tie over it. All right. So there, immediately, I'm going to turn this, push this around a bit so you can see a bit better. Well, that was easily said, wasn't it? I'm very soon regretted. Right. If you're going to cut synthetic wings, the wing has to be the same length as the hook shank, right? As per traditional. What I could do is I could cut that off and just have the big loop. Yeah? Have a single loop on there. So that's one way. I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to cut through that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Right, so now what I've got is that the longest part of your wing is always the front of the wing. Yeah. So what I can do is not cut the tails off. Take that. I'm going to do it this way because I think you might be able to see it better. Here's cut down. All right. And then I'm going to round that off there. And there is a wing. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, lovely.
Right. So you can now create your wing and you can put your hackle in front of it or whatever. Right. So that's another way of doing a wing. Okay. That's actually it's a bit long for me. So for this particular done, I could do that, right? That seems more natural to me now, doesn't it, you? Right? And all I've got to do is put the done hackle in front. But I want to utilize this to show you a number of techniques. So I'm taking that off and I'm binning that. All right. So there's two techniques there which you can use for that bit there. Right. So what else could I use? Right. Well, I can use other materials such as CDC. Now, I'm taking out 4 pieces of, I've got CDC here in there, which I'm taking out, and I'm going to put 4 feathers. If I come out so you can see what I'm actually doing, because I'm sure you're not convinced I'm doing anything but that. So I'm putting these back to back so they concave into each other. I pre-sorted these. What I'll do is if I get a large bag of feathers, what I can actually do is then sort. It's a sad life, I know, but I actually said that, and I'll split them into small to large and to medium, because then it just makes life so much easier. And I'm a bit of a saddo, really.
Aren't we all?
So, probably. Right. So I've got those 4 feathers together. And now what I can do is actually measure them off there, the length of the hook shank, right, which is that, to where the end of my thumb is, on there, pinch the thread between my thumb and forefinger, lift up and pull the thread up. All right, 1 securing turn, 2 securing turns. And then I've got a wing that sits parallel and upright. Okay. If I was trying, and they extend beyond the body because the wing is, I've got that gap there. Right. So if I lift that off, all right, if I lay them flat down, which I'm perfectly entitled to do because it's my fly and I can do what on earth I want. I can pinch and loop on there, and I've got more of a sedge-like wing, which is lower and flatter. But if I'm fishing, right, and all of a sudden I see a hatch start, what I can do, and this is the only time I would advocate this, right, I can pull the wing out. I'm avoiding the tail, I am.
Just.
And I can create a wing. Right. So you've got 2 ways, but it's a way that if you're fishing and you're fishing the sedge pattern, and all of a sudden, and the best time of that is in the evening, then you've got options, haven't you? Right? Or you can time like that. I hate cutting CDC, and this is the only time I ever do it. All right. That Glenn's looking at me with a steely eye there, I'm sure, but it works. So what's other ways I can do it? All right. Well, because a damn fine chasp. What I can actually do is use hair. All right, and this is fine deer hair. And I've got to look for a piece of equipment which I absolutely wouldn't be without, which is that, which is my hair stacker. All right, and this is a gallop slide in because it twists out like that. Absolutely superb.
That's a posh one.
Oh, I've got the full set. I had to murder somebody for it though, but so what I'm doing is I've just cut a piece off the hair. I've got it here. So I've got all that hair there. What I've got to do is take that underbody hair out. And what I'll do is I've pulled it out, stroked it out, flick it. Right. If it was thicker than that, then what I would do is actually comb it through with a nit comb. I've put it into there. All right. Do you want me to see me do this, banging it, or I'm banging it on the table? As you can tell, because I am banging it. 'Cause, yes. Right, I open that up like that, and I can take, oh, can you see? Can you see? Right, I can take the hair out, which is what I've done, and now I have a clump of hair. All right, which I can put into there as the wing. Now, I'm actually going to do this slightly differently because I'm going to show you the technique of how you would tie a wing in using as if I was tying a CDC and elk, which I'm sure you've all seen, but most people do not know how to tie it in. All right, so what I've actually done is cut the wing to length. In fact, it needs to go a bit shorter. So I've cut the wing to length. I bring up one turn up and then through the center with the second turn up and then once over, and that is it. All right, now I've then flattened that down so I can actually put in my front hackle on there. Right, if I really then wanted to be clever, I could additionally add a pair of CDC wings over the top. And if your eyesight is poor, you could make one of them white. And there you have a double materialed wing. I'll finish this off now by putting a hackle on the front of it because I think it deserves it now. And I'll show you the way I tie my hackles in. I've got a nice fine olive micro saddle hackle, and I tie it in at the front using a figure of 8 over the clean stalk. So 2 over, 2 in front, and then I tie the stalk down, and I leave the silk up by the wing. I take the hackle and I wind it backwards. If you wish, you could put some dubbing on there. It is entirely up to you. And I bring that up once, twice, tied off, and then bring the silk back through, and that goes over the top of that stalk, or rickets, as Michael Radovich likes to call it, the rickets. And then take this, keep your thread tight, and it'll just snap off. Right, if you start sticking scissors in there, you'll ruin the fly. And we'll finish it off. Notice I don't cut with my scissors like that. I'm pushing it forward onto the V, so it just slices through it. And that it's just you've seen there 3 or 4 different ways of winging that particular fly. Do you want to ask any questions?
Yes, Mark. CDC's a pain for me.
Right.
I've not seen anybody do this, but when they're putting a CDC wing on, they use the feather with the stalk, as you can see in that one you've got up now.
Yeah.
See the stalk and the feather. Could you not use Mark, for example, Mark Pettigen's magic tool and put it in the table and just use the fibers?
Absolutely. Right. Listen, it's your fly. And what you would then is you'd spin it up, right? I don't know if you know he's got another tool out as well, which tightens it all up. Are you aware of that? Yeah. Well, he's bought out another tool which costs another bloody fortune, but it does work. And what that does is that tightens up all the hair, right? And what you'll end up is either a big hackle or a clump of CDC fibers. And what you can do then is draw them back and up and actually just put a couple of, wax your thread so it doesn't slip and just put them on there and create another wing again.
He calls it a stacker, doesn't he, Mark?
Yeah, he does. I've got one here.
Is that the tool?
Start looking for it. It'll be.
Is that the tool?
That's the tool.
Yeah, the stacker.
I've had that for a few years. That's been out a while.
Yes, yeah.
Never. I've only ever used it once when I first got it, just to try it.
Yeah.
yeah, didn't we all?
I've got a desk full of them.
Blade down it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Blade that slides down the clip.
That's
Yeah.
it, yeah.
Oh, I've got one of them.
Like that.
I can't see it.
Like that.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I just killed the cat.
Yeah, like that.
You can use a piece of card to do the same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You're right. And cheaper.
Or a bit of foam. There's so many different things. But fishermen are all tackle tarts, aren't we? And fly ties in particular. That if there's a gadget that can do something that's 10 times more complicated than actually using your fingers, we'll buy it.
The phone you cut for me still works well.
Sorry?
The phone that you cut for me still works well.
Don't tell everybody. Right. I'm going to go on a feather wings, right? Because the way time is cracking on, I'd like, because Derek told me there's a lot of you having real problems with wing slips.
Yes.
So what I would like to do is show you how to tie a traditional pattern with a single feather, slips, how to tie traditional slips, how to tie the Donald Downs method of putting in slips, which then allows you to actually tie in a parachute hackle, right? And I'm also going to do a no hackle fly, right? So if I take you through each stage of that, is that all right for you?
Mhm. Yeah, sure.
Right. Sorry, I'm looking for everything now that I've just thrown down on the floor. Right, I'll tie all these on size 16s. But no, except the no hackle, I may go smaller. Has Peter fallen asleep there?
Which Peter?
No, Pete had to leave.
Did he?
Big Pete, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, he had to leave.
the big Mary. Right, so if I go to... We've got all the diehards left now, have we? Is that all right?
Yep.
Right,
Mark,
of
could I ask a quick question?
course you can.
I've seen on
Yes.
a few videos, some people cut the hackle off underneath.
Yeah,
What are the pros and cons, and why would you do it, and why wouldn't you do it?
right. I do it quite often, or alternatively, I will cut not the whole of it off, but I'll actually cut like a V out.
Right.
So what happens is you have your hackle. I don't. Sorry, I'm trying to show you things that. Oh, that didn't work, did it? I just went off. Right. What the idea is that you end up with your hackles being like that.
Yeah.
Right. So the fly is where my knuckles are, and so it gives the imprints of feet on the water.
Right.
The only issue with that is that it can lift the fly too high off the water. Right. Normal hackles normally will fly flat out like that, depending on their quality and their strength, or they'll go into the water. I don't particularly like them in the water, so I'll cut it off straight to the body, right? So what happens is that will hold flatter, but the fish dictate where and what you can do. That's why you always carry with you some clippers or scissors with you. So if you've got it on, you can always take it off. If you haven't got it on, if you've already taken it off, you can't glue it on. It's a bit like salt in dinner, isn't it? But it depends what you're trying to do. I tie a lot of my dries with the body, part of the body. In fact, all my emergers, I tie on bent hooks or curved dry fly hooks to ensure that their butt is still in the water, right? Because it really is a true emerger. You've still got the nymphal shock on it, and the fly is actually crawling out of its own back, out of its own thorax cover. And fish will see that, and they'll see some nymphal shocks are normally opaque, but then as the insect goes out, there's light goes through it. They also fill that nymphal shock full of air in order to escape. Is this process that goes through because the nymphal shock is solid chitin, and hence the reason. You've seen my snowshoe emerger. One of the reasons why I put those 3 ribs of green green what do you call it? Bloody hell, green foil on it is or green bit of green flash is because that imitated exactly what I saw in a natural insect.
Right.
So that's what you got to do. Again, it's all about observation.
Yeah.
And on different beats on the same river, insects and fish will behave differently.
Right.
I mean, what you know how much I love the Usk, but I'll be honest with you, the Usk is probably one of the hardest rivers in the UK in which to learn your skills upon. And there's lots of fish there, but it's
That's why I don't catch many.
well, I've seen people, and it's why we started the fishing skills days and whatnot, because people were still fishing with a size 12 and a size 10 March brown in July and August. And I say, well, why? Well, that caught me fish in March. Well, yes, it would do. Why else? Well, I can see it. And that's why I started developing patterns that people that would work and they'd have the right triggers in, but people could see.
Right.
So it's not being a case of a clever bugger. It's a case of thinking about what you're wanting to achieve and why.
Okay.
But you ain't wrong to do it. It's like some parachute hackles are tie upwards like that, and some are tied down. If it's tied upwards, the actual body's in the water, right? And the post is outside of the water, and it's rested on the hackle. And I've changed from that downward hackle, right, where it's sitting on its feet and it's got its body print on it, right? It's why I've also started tying a lot of flies reversed. So, I mean, Gordon van der Spey showed, put a fly on Facebook, I think, with a feather bent round and forward. Well, I've been using that for about 15 years. Right, and that's something an idea that I developed from Jens Pilgaard, because he used to do same, and he and the reason how he formed it, right, because it had nothing to it but silk and this feather, and it created the legs as well. And the only reason he could to make it was that he nicked his wife's eyebrow tweezers, and it was only eyebrow tweezers that could allow you to form the wing as he wanted it.
Right. Okay.
You know, and there is nothing new in fly tying other than materials, right? And what I try to do and always try to do is teach techniques which I hope people will go away and practice or actually develop themselves. I mean, as you know, I used to mentor all this and teach all this. One of the greatest compliments is when people come up to me and say, you know, when you showed me that and taught me this, I said, yeah, well, I've gone on and developed it. And I said, oh, brilliant. And well, no, it's not. You've taken it further, and we all do that all the time. And that's so important. And the fact that we share that in communities like this, it's what it's about.
Mhm.
I think so.
Yeah.
But right.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Great. Thanks.
I can't remember what it was now, but
About hackles.
I mean, one of the best flies you can have is with a partridge hackle. I don't know why it's so effective, such as a jingler through a stiffer hackle, right? Because the stiffer hackle supports that jingler hackle or the partridge hackle, but that's got the movement and the look, just phenomenal.
Mhm.
And don't just tie it in a size 12. You know, it's go down, down, down. And that's what frightens people is that they say, oh, I can't tie your size 22. Listen, with these meat cleavers on the end of my arms And the fact that that one's got no feeling goes in the spasm and that one's got little feeling, if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's just practice. Don't let it beat you. Right, what was I going to do now? Oh, tie a fly on it. Right, I'll go back to the other camera. And if anybody else has got any questions at any time, just ask. Right. I am tying this on at this point. I always tie my wing on first off, but I always lay an underbody of silk. And I always try to tie my wing. Oh, look at that. That's being a clever dick, isn't it, eh? That hasn't happened all night, has it? Can I all remind you what the definition of an expert is?
First time for everything.
Oh, that's not the first time, I assure you. I can't even work on the premise that even the broken watch is right twice a day. Sorry, could I have a clean hook?
I always keep a scalpel handy for that.
I'm not allowed sharp things. You don't trust me. Right, just taking on the silk, putting an underbody of silk. If it snaps again, I'm going home. Right, I'm actually going to put a wing on here. Sorry, a tail. And I'm using Coq de Lion. And you don't need to count the fibers. Honestly, whether it's 4 or 5 or 6, no, but the fish aren't going 1, 2, 3. I'm pointing the fingers up. Now, one thing I often do with split wing flies is I bring the silk underneath the tail just once, just to kick it up. And it also spreads it. Now, why am I going to tie on the wing first before anything else? Right. The quite simple reason is if I cock it up, then I've not wasted hours and hours and hours. Now, I have prepared this earlier. This is teal. And quite often when you get teal, somebody will give you a wing who shoots, and it's normally got holes in it and all sorts. So one's normally blooded and battered, and the others are useless. And I took one feather off it, right? In fact, if I do this from here, right, I'm taking the plumescence off the base. It doesn't matter whether it's left or right, but what I do want you to note, right, if I point it at the camera, right, you can see that it curves, doesn't it? Right, now, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take a portion of that and pull it away. And I'm actually pulling it down so those tips come down. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll remarry them. Then I'll hold them like that and pull that away. All right. I can go in there with scissors if I want, but I'm not brave enough for that. Now you can see, if I put it in the right place, how it's bending away from me. Yeah. Now, if I wanted a wet wing, I get my fingers in between it and stroke down. All right. But I want a dry wing, don't I? So what I do is I take my fingers and just bend it in. And if you notice, what happens is I've got two slips from one wing. I'm going to change it in hands. Measure the wing. That point. Over the top. Pinch. Loop. Underneath. Draw up. I'm pinching those materials. And as I pinch down, one more turn. And you can see that they're tied in. 2 turns over just to secure it. You can't see that, can you? Because I've deliberately put that in the way, just in case it went wrong. How's that? Can you see there now?
Yep.
I cut that waist at an angle, so the body remains tapered. And I don't worry about it anymore. Right, I'm building up the body now. And I can utilize whatever I want to build that body. Okay. So if I just grab I'm using a different material, just super fine, just because it's here to hand. And something else I can throw in front of the camera, which will bugger everything up. And it's not a thick, heavy body. And I bring it up to the wing. And then I draw the wing back and tie in front of it with the dubbing on there. And you can see that the wing is standing upright. If I left that together, that is a perfect wing for a dry Clyde style type feather, but they will be in together rather than apart. All right, so I'm now going to take this olive figure of 8. And I'm figure of 8ing around the stalk. I'll put the dubbing on this time. I'm pulling the stalk to one side. And I'm bringing the silk to behind the wing. I'm not tying over the wing because that's already tied in. Yeah. And then what I'm going to do is 1 full turn, 2 full turns. I'm going to get a 3rd in and bring it right up to that wing base. Another one behind it. Oh, that's a bit too close. And then take my silk. 1, 2. And then I'll bring my silk back through. Pulling that wing out of the way. To the head. Be brave. Oh! Frightening, isn't it? Up through. Tie off the head. Now. Now you can see that this wing has already started to split naturally, hasn't it? But the important thing is right on the top. If I now want to emphasize that slip or that split, I can take my dubbing needle and I can rub it. And there you have almost perfect split wing fly with a single feather without doing slips. Clever, isn't it? Are there any questions?
No.
Are you sure? I'm
Not-
not questions, you know. I don't mind. But it's surprising how strong that is. But you don't want it too thick, right? You don't want the wing too thick. And I just think that looks nice.
Very, very good.
Can you see it better like that? If that's the important bit, is to get that right on, dead on top. You can see where the eye is and it's in between. And sometimes you can pull it. Right. Any questions on that one?
No, very good.
So if you can all do that, then you don't really need wing slips at all. But just in case. Right.
Mark, what size are you tying on the river for that? What hook?
Well, I've used the same hook, size 16. It's a RX.
No, sorry, I meant what would you fish on the river? What size hook on the river?
Oh, on the river, I'd utilize size 16, 18, 20s, 22s.
Right, okay.
I have been known to be gone really silly and down to 24s and 26s. I used to midge patterns, I would fish down 30s. But you don't necessarily, the difficulty is finding a combination of rod and leader that suits, that can take a fish. Because believe it or not, I hate talking to me voice. I've done it again. I hate hooking fish and losing them, right?
Yeah.
And I can't fish the river anymore due to the fact that I'm stuck in a wheelchair most of the time. But sometimes you will not catch a fish until you are actually fishing with something that represents what they're eating, right? And there's a thing called GIS. I don't know whether you've heard of it, general imitation size and shape. I keep saying this every time I come and tie for you all. I'm writing my book. I'm now on the second draft, right? And I'm getting there. So hopefully it'll be done. But I'm not in a race. The problem is I keep reading it. I think, I forgot that. Have I explained this too complicated, or is it too easy? And some people have said to me, nothing you do is not without complications. So, yeah, I'll put my hand up to that. But a lot of it's described in there and about presentation. But when you're fishing, how many times give you an example. You know where the 2 helicopter pads are at Team Out? For those of you that don't know the Stretcher River, right, it's absolutely stuffed full of big, good fish. But on the Merthyr side of the beat, there are 2 concrete platforms, and they look like helicopter landing pads, right? And I was fishing up to one of these, and this guy on the other bank said, "What on earth are you fishing for dace for?" I said, "Sorry." He said, "Why are you fishing for those dace?" I said, "What makes you think they're dace?" He said, "Well, they're just tiny, tiny little rises." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "It's a bit of fun." I said, "You know." And then I hooked the first fish, which was £2. Then I hooked the second fish, which was £2.5. And then I hooked the third fish, which was about £1.75. And he was looking over, and I said, "Bloody hell, these dace are hard fighters." and he just did a bit of fun. And he said, "I thought those were dace." I said, "No. So some of your smallest pinprick rises are your biggest fish. They really are. And I've taken them in 2 inches of water, you know, so it's about weighing skill and presentation and all the rest of it. But the point is, I had to use the flies that I was using were size 28 baby sunflies, because they're on the midge. Absolutely brilliant. When he asked me what fly I was using, I said, "Oh, I'm using a size 28 baby sunfly." And he went, "What's that?" I said, "Very good." He didn't have a clue. And it's one of the most simple patterns you could tie. Right. Split wings. Same size hook, same hook. I shall go into clandestine mode again. You didn't realize I was tying in a kilt, did you?
Are you sure you got something on at all?
No, I pulled it over my head now. Right. Exactly the same way of tying this on. Underbody. And this time I'm just going to tie the wing on first, all right? And I'll come back to that point there. It's important that once you've set it out, and the silk for me gives me my measurements of where I want the flies to go to. Now, there's a couple of things I want to explain about dry flies. And I've got lots of stuff here to show you. And can I find any of it? No. Yeah. Right. I'm just going to go on the big camera again. A lot of what you need to do is actually preparation. All right. Now, these are starling wings. And what I do is I get them and I pair them up. And again, it's all about preparation. And by pairing them up, it just makes life easy, right? Because I know that they're of similar length, right? I go to the point sometimes where I cut everything out of the center and I get them to like that. Because when I cut them, when I bring those together like that, I know I'm cutting them all at the same point. Yeah?
Yep.
And I use starling, I use teal, I use, and I've got left and right starling there, right? Put in different bags. I've got snipe, which a lovely material, certainly for the smaller feathers. But if you're starting anew, I recommend your best bet is mallard. There is an issue with mallard wings, which I will dig out now.
They're there somewhere, Mark.
Oh, I know. I buried everything about 20 times tonight. Teal, snipe, starling, mallard. Right, I'm going to go on the big camera so you can see this. Sorry, on the more precise camera. If I put that there, the makeup of this feather is slightly different, right? This is your waist. There's your rachis. Can you see this bit here, which is like it's almost like it's been painted on?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got your fiber, right? You can only tie on this thin bit. If I take this to what I'm turn it to the side so you can look at it, how's that? What you can see is that base is very, very thick, right? And then it doesn't thin out until you've got past this bit here. So though you end up with a lot of fiber, you don't want to be tying that into your fly because it just fills up the fly with bulk. So I have this is getting ridiculous now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie or cut a slit there. From one wing, and I'm going to cut a slit from the other wing. And then I'm going to use fly tie as glue, which is basically licking my finger. All right. So I've licked my finger and I can pick up the first piece and bring it up. All right. And I can start to marry the two together. So there, you can see I need to bring those points together. Yeah. So that's almost it. And you can see it splits in the middle, right? Those points are together. And then I'm going to change hands because the longest part of the wing is at the front. So when I tie it in and pull it up, it's going to be like that. So when I tie it in, it's down there. Now, what I'm looking at is probably about the width of the wing is going to be the gape and a half in width. Now, some of you might find that a bit difficult at the start, so just go smaller. It doesn't matter because after three or four casts, it's just a pile of fluff, pile of fibers anyway. But I'm measuring that on there. up to that point and pinch or pull the thread up over the top, pinch, loop. You can see that soft loop coming down, up, and then I'm closing the loop between my thumb and forefinger by pulling it up. And there you can see, can you see the fibers start to close? No. See the fibers start to close. Once over again. And once over. And I don't tie over where I've tied originally. All right, because if I do, I'm going to create myself an awful lot of problems. All right, because it's just going to collapse the wing. The reason why I keep my fingers on top and don't tighten forward is because it will push the wing over to the top. And the most important thing with this is that you want that wing to actually be on top. Okay, can you see how it's over the eye?
Yeah.
Now, this stage, if it isn't quite there, what you can do, you can manipulate it there. Yeah? So it's over both sides, but I'm still tying down where I've cut the waist off. I'm bringing that round. You don't use any glue. Please, please do not use any glue. Otherwise, I'll be ever so depressed and your fly will sink like a stone. Right, I know it's very tempting. The only glue you're allowed to use initially is fly tires glue, which is in your mouth.
After you've been sucking a toffee.
I haven't been sucking a toffee. Right, so I'm now tying in the tail, pinching loop and just looking at the length of it. All very nice. It fills in that gap. Bring it to the end at that point. Lift up, all tickety-boo, and then I can get rid of the waste. So you're now in the same position that you were with the last fly, but this time you've taken it a slip from either side of the bit of material that you're using. Again, a bit of dubbing. I'll use different colored dubbing this time because I'm allowed. It's my fly. I can do as I want, and I'm going to be adventurous. Lift the wing up and just pull it. I've got it between my thumb and forefinger, but I've just bent it back, all right? And I stroke my fingers up, so then it stands upright. Going to take that feather that I have now lost again. God. You must be very impressed with my skills at losing feathers. It's very hard.
Cool.
It's very hard to continue to be as poor at this, losing feathers and kit, so consistently.
It's called man luck.
Don't say it too loud, my missus will hear you.
You know how it evolved, don't you?
No. Go on,
Well,
tell me.
Women were in the caves, And so they had to have eyes all over the place, looking after the kids and looking for wild animals coming through the cave entrance. And the men were out hunting, and so they had more of a tunnel vision view.
That's true, that
And
is.
that's why women can find things when men can't.
That's why they can't reverse in cars as well. Seriously, not that I'd ever say it in front of a woman, but they haven't got that spatial awareness and perception that men have got because of instinctive hunting all the time. Because how many times have you said to them, "Missus, how far is that away?" And it's miles. And she said, "Oh, about a couple of 100 yards."
My wife was just watching. She's buggered off now, disgusted with a lot of you.
Quite right, too.
You're all full of crap, she says.
It's true. But that's why they love us, because they can feel superior in the knowledge that we don't know what the hell we're talking about.
What the hell?
Listen, I've always worked on the premise that even a broken watch is right twice a day. Right, so there we go. You'd think I'd done these before, wouldn't you? That's going to be the kiss of death now, because when I cut this off, it's going to go bang wee, and especially for you, Keith. You bring it in, right, and just cut the center out. And then it will lie flatter. All
I've
right.
always wondered why they do that, and it's the legs.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Clever, isn't it?
Mm.
But you've got to observe what one of the chapters I've done in my book. Sorry, I've dropped my bobbin and I'm trying to pick it up. There we go. One of the things that sorry, just to make sure that it all sits nice, I just always rub it with that, and then you can do with it what you want. You can either have it on its side like that. Some people prefer them higher up. You can, they're quite strong, so you can manipulate them back if you want. All right, these are probably, because I've used mallard, are a tad long, but don't phone the fly, please, will you? You happy with that?
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
So, would you now like to see the magic bit of a parachute split wing?
Go on, then.
Are you sure?
I've been dying to do it all night.
Go on, twist me
No, I
arm.
haven't. Sorry, hang on, I've got to rethread. Hang on. First of all, has anybody heard of Donald Downs?
Yes,
Sorry?
I have.
Yeah, well,
In actual fact, made me a detached body woven mayfly.
did he?
Yeah.
He was a real character. If any of you went to Chatsworth, you would have always seen him there with his deerstalker hat on and he's being his tweeds and whatnot. But he was a superb fly tie. He's gone past now, unfortunately. Suffered quite badly with Alzheimer's in the end. But a kinder, more generous gentleman you couldn't meet. Do you know what I mean? And he brought out a book on fly dressing. and he used a different method to tie wings on. And it's reverse of this, but he was doing it in such a way so it would have or give strength to the fly. Sorry, I'm looking for that other fellow that I feathered on. Now, I'm tying it on the same hook again. I have got more hooks here, I promise, but right. Should I go to the magic camera now? Right. Before I start this, mind, just going off the last bit, one thing that you can do to make sure that your dry fly or your split wings are right before you even get them near a hook is, I'll just go to the big camera again. You can pre-tie them. And I did a few just to show you what you do. Simply, you just put a couple of slips together, right? And then tie them in your hands with a bobbin. So you literally put the slips together like that, yeah? With the tips in, and then and then you can cut, right? And what you'll end up with is a wing that you can utilize and play about with on your hook. I'll take it back to that. So, but if I take it back to the big camera, sorry, the tying camera. So what you end up with is it tied like that there, and your wing is there, so you know it's all in proportion. Right, this is for a bigger hook, this is, but then what you can do is just hold it there, pinch and loop, and it's tied on. Yeah, I used to tie these up for people I was teaching just to give them confidence. If I was feeling generous, which wasn't very often. I like to see them suffer, really.
Got it right there.
Don't be like that, man. You used to love our evenings together, but then like that, you see, it just makes it a little easier so you can sit down and concentrate and making the actual wings the size that you want. And if it's too big on the first go, you can put it away to use for a bigger fly.
Just like that.
So,
Mark, what's the smallest hook you go on them?
on these,
Yeah.
probably 22.
Oh, you got to take the piss, me. I'm looking at a 22 now. I can barely see it with my glasses.
Well, take your glasses off. You'll be surprised what you find.
I don't even know.
But the point is, right, that, listen, I don't want to come across as a clever bugger, but I've been doing this both, yeah.
I'd be lucky to get a tip of a feather on that.
Right, but what's the make of hook?
Oh, these are Orvis.
Right. Different manufacturers have different size shanks.
Right.
Right. So with grip, they've got a longer shank, right, which allows you to play about a bit more and gives you more space. Some partridge patterns are smaller than others, right? In shank. And I can't emphasize enough that I'm using these Arex hooks because they're good, they're strong, they're long enough for you to learn the skills on, And then once you've learnt the skills and practiced them, then, because what I would say to you is, how many flies of one pattern do you tie in a session?
I'm not answering that. I'm looking to tie one.
Well,
I'm looking.
most people will tie 1, 2, or 3 flies and think, all right, I've got bored now, I'm going to tie something else, right? And then the wife says, look at the mess you've made in the kitchen here, bugger off. Or I mean, I'm lucky I've got a room around me, which is mine. Everybody else can bugger off. But I was once stuck underneath the stairs, right, tying flies, and it was the most depressing place on earth. But I used to come home from, and I was a copper, as most of you know, and I used to just, I had to get away from the family, go sit, and I'd tie a couple of flies, 3 flies. Didn't matter what they were. And by the time the 3rd fly had been tied off, I was back home. You know, I wasn't fighting or battling or wiping spittle off me chest or vomit off my shoes and whatnot. You know, I was back home. And that's, you got to keep things in perspective. Now, what I would say is pick a pattern, right? On the skill that you want to learn, tie 3 in succession, stop, have a cup of tea, then tie 3 more, right? And then compare them. And if you can then tie 3 more, and then you increase that to 6 at a time. So you end up with a dozen flies, which will go in your box. Yeah, because just because a fly isn't perfect doesn't mean you can't use it.
I know. I've learned that watching you tonight. So
Oh, thank you.
It come across wrong, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm crap. And I take no offense by it. But the point is that you never stop learning.
Yeah, there's a lot of crap I've tried in the past. I thought that's no good, and I've just threw it away. Where now I realise I was silly, really. I should have tried it.
For my first few years, and I started tying a lot when I was in Northern Ireland, right, in the 70s, right, and I had to do something that I could get everything out of my head, right, and I started tying flies, and unbeknown to me, my missus was putting these flies away, and I thought that I was throwing them in the bin because I was so ashamed, right? And she said, they're beautiful. And I said, now take the bag off your head and look at them again, like, you know. But seriously, you've just got to keep at it.
Yeah.
It's practice, practice, practice. But the first time you sat in the seat of a car, right? Could you drive particularly well? Well, your missus tells me you still can't, but don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But you learn, don't you? There's a thing in all parts of life, right? You are, first of all, unconsciously incompetent. You don't know what to do, and you don't have any expectations, and it's the best time in your life because you do what you want when you want, and you don't care what it looks like, right? Then comes the shock when you think, actually, I want to learn about a particular trade or a particular skill, and you become consciously incompetent because you think, oh my God, I can't do it. Look at what I've created. And then you will become consciously competent, right? So you know what you're doing, you've learned the skills, you practice the techniques, and what you present is good. And then the top level, which is the 4th level, is you actually become unconsciously competent because you do it without thinking.
Which is like driving and stuff like that.
Exactly. It becomes automatic, right? Now, what I try and do is then look outside of the box. So there is a 5th level where you try to create and interpret those techniques to improve your success, and in this case with fly dressing on the river. You know, and some of the best times I've had on the river, and Glenn will tell you this, is that you sit there. I used to do a lot of sea trout fishing with Alan Rees, right? He was probably one of the best sea trout anglers the UK has ever had, right? Or still has. And we used to sit on the riverbank and we'd be there fishing for sea trout, right? And then we'd enter into discussions. What about this? What about that? What about the other? And he said, well, I'm thinking of this fly. I said, that's called the cock robin. Really? Right? And he developed fly. I said, yeah, that's a variation of this. And I said, oh, I'm thinking of doing this. He said, I did that 3-4 years ago, right? And it was great that it gave you confidence that you were going the right way, or it saved you making the same mistakes. Because if we don't share what's gone wrong, no matter how good we think it will be, it might not necessarily be.
Yep.
Right. Sorry, I might have talked enough. Sorry. Right. The wing is tied in first, right? And it's tied different. It's tied in the same position, but it's actually tied differently. In that, right, I'm going to cut the slip from each side. Again, I'm licking my finger. Ooh. Licking my finger, and that holds. Lick my finger so I can pick that up and I can put them both together. So I've now got my slips again. Yeah. Whereas before I tied them with the butt ends to the back end of the tail, this time I'm going to tie them backwards. So it's pointing, the points are pointing back, but the longest fiber is still on top. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Lift up, pinch, loop, and you can see that already the most important technique is this pinch and loop, isn't it? Lift up, comes down, over, again, pinch. All right. So there's my wing, yeah? I just make sure it's all tickety-boo, and I lift the wing up and I take my thread to behind the wing, yeah? Now this is Donald Downes's way of doing it, and I've tied one wing bigger than the other, which is really annoying. So I'll just take it off. Reset them. And you can get a bit away with this about twice. Lift up, pinch, loop, up, pull down. Over, pinch, loop, over, and check. Right, that's all right. Gently pull the wings forward and put the thread behind. Okay? A couple of those fibers have cut through. Now what I'm going to do is bring the waist from this side behind the wing and tie it in. Take the waist from the other side and do exactly the same. So what I've now got is, what I have now is this buffer zone around the base of the wing. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be an area where I can tie in my parachute hackle. So I'm going to tie all that waist down. And I'm actually going to bring the silk round loosely around the base. So I'm going to have to move this a bit because I need to be able to manipulate it. Around the base of that wing. Yeah. Don't worry about it. It will twist sometimes. It almost twists at 90 degrees. Don't worry about it at this stage. I'm now going to tie in a feather ready to hackle on the post, and I'm using this sort of Cree feather. Sorry, I'm just cleaning off the plumescence. Do you like that word? It sounds rather good, doesn't it? Right, so that's ready to tie in once I've tied the tail in. Got my cotte de lion. If I put it to the side, it will roll over onto the top. Bring it underneath and pick it up. Cut away the waist. Take a bit of dubbing. I've taken the dubbing up to the wing base, and I'm now going to tie in a hackle. And I'm tying it with the whole face towards me, so you can see what happens. Just get rid of that bit of stem there. Take a bit more of the dubbing. Pick it through round and tie off. take your fly under your vise and just drop it down. Take your thread and tie it on around the base of your wing. Which, as you can see, is really easy. Until you get to your third turn and it doesn't want anything else to happen. Glad I left this till the end of the night. What I'm doing is, because it keeps slipping off every couple of turns, I'm just putting it underneath the body. And what I'm going to do is rub a bit of wax on the silk to stop it slipping. There you can see it's become stable now. Pull the wings out, take the turns. Do not worry about the wings twisting. Bring that hackle down by 90 degrees and underneath all those fibers. Then bring it up and finish off underneath it, which traps it in. We'll finish it off on the base, so it pushes those hackles up, if that's the effect that you want. Now, bring it back up, and as I said to you, do not worry about the fact that those wings have turned, because what you're going to do is take them and twist them back, and you can pull them apart quite strongly. And there you have your parachute split wing fly, which I've been told was impossible.
Very good.
It ain't easy. But but it just shows what you can do once you understand that these mallard fibers I'm using are very long towards the end of the fiber, so I should have straightened them out a bit. But the point is, it's got that trigger point of the tail, the legs, the body on the water, right, the feet footprint, and the wing.
Very good, Mark. Excellent.
Nice.
All right. One more to finish off. Do you want to see it, or have we had enough?
Keep going. We've got plenty of time.
You might have.
Yeah.
Right. Last one for the night, which everybody says is a really difficult fly they have. It's a Swisher and Richards pattern. And what we're going to tell you is this, which is, oh, can't you see it from there? Right, is this, which is a no hackle done. Right, which is for finicky trout, it is one of the best patterns I've ever used, honestly. This is on a size 16 again, but tie it down to a size 18, whatever. But I mean, I wouldn't suggest you start off with that. You can just do it any way that you want. Right, so if I'm using a RX size 16. Now, this is quite a fast pattern to tie once you get used to it, but there is a little bit of preparation that you have to do. All right. Right. I have cut this already, and what I have done, I've taken some thinned Sapphire, right, and it's very runny, or you can use something like Fly Right and just put a bit of glue on the tips. Okay, you have to do it because otherwise it will split every time. I think the original pattern, they sprayed it with some adhesive gum or whatever, but I found that this is just as easy. And the first thing you're going to do is there's a lot of is here, isn't there? Right. The wing is a bit wider. So I'll put my scissors in there. Is. And I can cut. So I've got two equal bits straight away. Right. Because they're even. So I'm not worrying about getting two slips that aren't matching. And I'll leave the rakis on to start. So they're ready there. I'm going to tie in my tail and body in first.
Change the camera, Mark.
Oh, sorry, just testing.
Thank you.
Have you become my conscience? Right, is that in focus yet?
Perfect.
Right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put in a butt or a butt ball to hold the wing out, because this sits the whole point of this is it's like an emerging pattern, but it will also be taken when the duns are on the water. But one of the main things that keeps it on the top of the water are the tails, as well as the shape of the wings. Now I'm going to use micro fibbits, and I tie these in 2 at a time. Somebody ask a question then, or? I used to pick out the pairs at the same time until I grew a beard, and all I was doing is pulling my moustache. So I'm holding it on towards the side. Couple of turns, and then I can pull one of them out, which is really annoying. Don't do that. Take another 2. Sorry, I'm lining up these fibers off camera. I keep forgetting you can't see what I'm doing, but it's nothing that you can arrest me for, put it that way. Then you tie in the body, but you actually want it pronounced at the thorax, because what happens with this fly is that these wings actually push against the thorax, and rather than being tied on top, they're actually tied on the side. Easy. Now we're tying the wings, and these have to be tied in a particular way. I'm just setting up the wings on my fingers with fisherman's glue, i.e. spittle. And what I do is, what you can see is that they're already splitting as a pair. So I actually put them on there. All right, so they're actually pointing downwards. Now, this is the important bit. Lift up pinch, loop, come over, and then bring your thread in between the two slips. Can you see what I did there? Do you want me to do it again?
No.
I'm glad you said no. Because I haven't done it the first time. Then round all of it and then starting to tighten. Over again, tighten, and once more. And what you have is that the wings are on the side, but sort of come underneath as well. These haven't gone particularly well because they've actually split a bit. Oh, don't like that. One actually went over the hook shank, so I shall do that again. Because it's really easy.
I think the important thing is keeping a grip on them fibers, isn't it?
Well, that's the same with all winging, but with this, the important thing is making sure that you lay or you get those fibers laid, because it's a wider wing than normal, you know. Well, I might cut these this time, so because this racus is getting a bit large. So there we go. So it's up. No pressure. I'm closing my thread because it wants to do its own thing. I'm going to let it spin it up a bit so I've got more control. There we go. Pinch, loop, and then up through the center. And close. Round and over. That's better. Well, I'm glad I chose this really easy fly to finish on. And then you can tie in that waist. And then you then again dub the front of the fly. Before I tie off, what I'm going to do is I'm taking my dubbing hook and pushing that wing forward. I'm pushing that wing forward and tie off. And what you can see is, once I've tied it off, hopefully, is that the wings actually come from the side of the fly as opposed to being on top. So that's it from the top, from the side, from underneath, and it just sits on the water like that with the tail, and it's a cracking little pattern. The only problem is I only use them for really finicky fish, because once it's caught one or two fish, it's buggered. But have you enjoyed that, boys?
Fantastic. Thank you. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Brilliant, Mark. Thank you.
Good job, Mark.
Well, as long as you've enjoyed it, you know. And is there any questions any of you want to ask? Speed velocity of an unladen African swallow normally follows now.
Well, I think you're very keen on the Renzetti bobbin holder.
I've been using those for 30 years. And it's what I like is, because I've got big fat fingers, if I use a bobbin with a short stem, I can't see what I'm doing. Right. But if I use these longer ones, and I hate to say this, this is my box of bobbins, and they're nearly all Renzettis.
I think we've all got that, haven't we?
Yeah, well, tackle tarts, I told you.
Definitely.
It's not a hobby, it's an obsession.
Become a kleptomaniac.
Yeah, you met the wife then.
No, tackle start is right. Tackle start is right.
But I mean, what does it matter if you enjoy it? Like I said to the missus, I don't drink. I don't, well, I spill most of it. I don't gamble, right? You know, other than on when you think you see a moth. But I mean, if you look up, my room is all materials right the way round everywhere. I hope I never get burgled, and if I do, I know where you all live. I hope you've enjoyed it. This, I've got to be honest, this will probably be one of my last demos that I do, because I find it very difficult sat for long periods with my spinal injury, and my hands really cramp up. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've had some use out of it.
Very much. Thanks.
Yeah.
Very
Okay.
informative, Mark.
Thank you,
Very
Mark.
good.
Brilliant evening.
Well, my pleasure. I'll still be tying videos for the Gwent Angling Society, and there's loads of stuff on there. So those of you that know of it will realise that. But I'm just about to, I'm doing all this lot in this set of sessions, because I was going to tell you things like this as well.
On camera.
Oh, God, you're awkward buggers, aren't you?
You can do that the next one, Mark.
Well, there might not be a next one, but just
Royal Wolf.
coat. Yeah, well, it's a way of showing you to use hair. I mean, to be honest, I could have tied 30, 40 flies to show you 30, 40 different techniques, but I can't do it anymore. So you'll have to watch the Gwent Angling Society website, and I'll let Derek know when they're on there. But I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Good night, all.
Brilliant.
Send you the bill, Derek.
All right, kid.
Hey, Mark, is he gone?
No, I'm still here.
What